Magic in the Moonlight is a 2014 American comedy film written and directed by Woody Allen. The film stars Emma Stone, Colin Firth, Hamish Linklater, Marcia Gay Harden, Jacki Weaver, Leerhsen, Eileen Atkins, and Simon McBurney. Set in the 1920s on the French Riviera, the film was released on July 25, 2014 by Sony Pictures Classics. Magic in the Moonlight received a generally mixed reception. Critics were complimentary of Colin Firth's acting, but also felt the script was too rushed. Plot: in 1928, a globally famous illusionist, Leerhsen, performs in front of a crowd in Berlin with his world-class magic act. As he walks off stage, the audience sees that he is actually a British man named Stanley. He berates his employees and is generally curmudgeonly towards his well-wishers. In his dressing room, he is greeted by an old friend and fellow illusionist, Howard Birkin. Howard enlists Stanley to go with him to the Quartier des Arts, where a rich American family, the Catledges, has apparently been taken in by a clairvoyant and mystic, Sophie. In fact, the son of the family, Bryce, is smitten with Sophie, and his sister Caroline and brother-in-law George are concerned Bryce is considering proposing marriage. Howard says that he has been unable to uncover the secrets behind her tricks, and he admits that the more he watched her, the more he believed she really has supernatural powers. So he would like Stanley, who has debunked charlatan mystics in the past, to help him prove she is a fraud. Howard and Stanley travel to the French Riviera, but Stanley is soon astonished by Sophie's ability to go into a fugue state and apparently pull out highly personal details about him and his family. Stanley witnesses a séance in which Sophie communicates with the deceased patriarch of the American family. A candle floats up from the table and Howard grabs it to try to discern what trickery is at play, but is astounded to find no apparent subterfuge. Stanley begins spending time with Sophie. He takes her to visit his aunt and they drive a convertible along the picturesque rocky corniches. When caught in a rainstorm, they end up at an observatory that Stanley had visited as a child. After the rain subsides, they open the roof up and view the stars. When Stanley and Sophie visit his Aunt Vanessa, Sophie is seemingly able, after holding Aunt Vanessa's pearls, to somehow relate most of the details of Vanessa's one great love affair. This finally convinces Stanley of Sophie's authenticity and he has an emotional epiphany, feeling that his lifelong rationalism and cynicism have been misguided. He is elated at looking at the world with new eyes and even breaks off his engagement with his equally rational and dispassionate fiancée, Olivia. At a Gatsby-esque party, Stanley and Sophie dance. As they walk together later that night, Sophie asks him if he has felt any feelings for her as a woman. Stanley, who has admired her talents as a mystic and is grateful to her for opening his eyes to a new worldview, is taken aback and admits that he has not thought of her that way. She leaves upset. The next day Stanley holds a press conference to tell the world that he, who spent his life debunking charlatan mystics, has finally come to find one who is the real deal. The reporters drill him with questions, but the grilling is interrupted when he receives news his Aunt Vanessa has been in a car accident. Stanley rushes to the hospital, and in an emotional scene in a waiting room considers turning to prayer for solace. That is, if he now has come to believe in divination and mysticism, perhaps he should believe in God and prayer. He begins to pray for a miracle to save his aunt, but is unable to go through with it. The rationality that has been his whole life comes back and he rejects prayer, the supernatural and by extension, Sophie and her powers. He decides once more to prove she is a fraud. Using a trick seen earlier in his stage act, Stanley appears to leave the room but stays to overhear Sophie and Howard discuss their collusion in what has been an elaborate ruse. He discovers that Sophie was able to know so much about him and his aunt because she and Howard collaborated to fool Stanley. Sophie was indeed a charlatan tricking the rich American family and was quickly discovered by Howard. Rather than unmask her and stop the ruse, he enlisted Sophie to help him one-up his best friend and rival, Stanley. Stanley is initially angry at Howard and Sophie but decides to forgive them. In a conversation with his Aunt Vanessa, who by then has recovered from her car accident, Stanley comes to the self-realization that he is in love with Sophie. He finds her and asks her not to marry Bryce, but marry him instead. Sophie is taken aback and finds his haughty, awkward proposal unsuitable. She tells him she still plans to marry the wealthy Bryce. Returning dejected to his Aunt Vanessa's, Stanley sits alone in the living room and talks to himself as if Sophie were there, but is surprised when a knock comes as an answer, similar to the sham seance he had observed earlier in which one knock meant yes, and two knocks meant no. He asks the still seemingly disembodied Sophie to marry him and hears one knock, turns to the door and sees Sophie. They embrace and kiss. Cast: Emma Stone as Sophie Baker, Colin Firth as Stanley Crawford, Hamish Linklater as Bryce, Marcia Gay Harden as Mrs. Baker, Jacki Weaver as Grace, Erica Leerhsen as Caroline, Eileen Atkins as Aunt Vanessa, Simon McBurney as Howard Birkin. Production: In April 2013, Emma Stone and Colin Firth joined the cast of the film. In July, they were joined by Jacki Weaver, Marcia Gay Harden, and Hamish Linklater, and Woody Allen began shooting in the south of France. Release: the film was set to be released on July 25, 2014. On October 17, 2013, it was announced that Film Nation Entertainment would handle the international sales for the film and Sony Pictures Classics have acquired North American distribution rights to it. On July 25, 2014, the film opened in 17 U.S. theaters and expanded nationwide in the U.S. on August 15, 2014. Reception: Magic in the Moonlight has received mixed reviews from critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a rating of 50%, based on 105 reviews, with an average rating of 5.9/10. The site's consensus states, while far from a failure, Magic in the Moonlight is too slight to stand with Woody Allen's finest work. Review aggregator Metacritic assigns the film a score of 54 out of 100, based on 39 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Rex Reed, writing for the New York Observer, gave the film a largely positive review, calling it a masterstroke of enchantment, and praising Colin Firth's acting. Jordan Hoffman of Film.com also enjoyed the film, stating, "This picture isn't a Euro unregistered trademark T is showy or obvious as one of his masterpieces, but it is quite good and deserves your time and respect." Alan Shistel of The Village Voice, however, disliked it, criticizing its familiarity to Allen's previous work and believing the writing was uninspired. Chris Nashawati of Entertainment Weekly gave the movie a B grade, remarking that it was funny and pleasant, but also forgettable. Salon's Andrew O'Hare felt that the characters were not drawn out enough because of poor writing. Marketing: the first trailer was released on May 21, 2014. References: External links: Magic in the Moonlight at the Internet Movie Database, Magic in the Moonlight at Rotten Tomatoes, Magic in the Moonlight at Metacritic.